everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on Windchill Workflow for Beginners. This is the agenda for today. I am going to do a quick introduction of PDSVISION and myself, and go through the concept of digital thread in product development, and then I'll talk about the workflow and the importance thereof. Show it to you in the Windchill environment, so the software bit of it. And then right at the end, we will handle the question and answer session. So during the webinar at any stage, feel free to start typing in your questions in that webinar's questions section at any point. And as I said, we will definitely attend to those at the end of the webinar. Please note that all attendees will be in listen-only mode. Okay, my name is Ifrahim Poyeng. I'm a PLM specialist at PDSVISION with just over 8 years experience on PDC products, specifically Windchill products. I'm a certified Windchill implementer and trainer. A little bit about us being PDSVISION. Formerly known as Boundary Systems, and was acquired by PDSVISION in 2018. So we currently trading as PDSVISION. We regard ourselves as the technology leader, and we also the first PDC global reseller and their preferred software supplier. We offer capabilities in consulting, implementation services, such as Windchill upgrades, Windchill installations, and so on. Same with CAD as well. We also offer professional training, which we do in person and also remotely. We also offer cloud services, where we basically offer the Windchill rehosting or hosting for our customers to basically take that burden off the IT team. And obviously the help desk that goes with supplying the software that we sell, the services that we sell, and making sure that our customers are always up and running and online. So if you look at the map, you would see where all the PDSVISION entities are located, which basically help us give close to 24 hours helpless service to our customers. As I've said, PDC is our main partner, but we also partner with other solutions providers to make sure that we deliver to our customers a comprehensive solution that meets their business requirement. The digital thread is defined as the use of digital tools and representations for design, evaluation, and the complete lifecycle management of any product. So it basically creates traceability and governance of your product data across the entire enterprise. So any one in the whole, or any department in the whole enterprise that is part of the product development, they basically have access to this information, and that information can basically be shared from the as designed, as built, and as maintained of the product. So in essence, if we go over to the next slide, you'd see that the information that basically build up to this digital thread should be able to tie all that data together from upstream all the way down to when the product is out in the field that needs to be serviced, and how it sort of gets operated. So whenever something changes downstream, it sort of flex you upstream, or vice versa. When something changes in the design itself, it also shows in your manufacturing bill of materials for the as-built information that something has changed upstream. Same applies once it's on the field. Any information that is of maintenance to that product, sort of gets flagged when anything upstream changes. So it gives you that link of the whole digital thread of your product, and a complete link, and also a single source of truth where you would basically go, or everyone from any department will actually go and access this information or same information. All right, back to the topic of today, the workflow. So what is a business workflow? So from the research that I've done, is that a workflow is basically a system for managing repetitive processes and tasks which occurs in a particular order. So something has to be done before, once it's done, it then moves over to the next person or the next team in the process, and when it's done, it goes to the next, and so on. So that flow of information, that is what makes up a business workflow. So the procedure itself is based on the workflow process, which composes of well-defined steps to efficiently accomplish your business goals. So if we are building out a product, we know it has to start with specification, the requirements collection, and then the specification requirements document, and then you go to design, the detailed design, then manufacturing, and then the product is out in the field, it needs to be serviced. So the process of actually building that and the steps that are followed, that is also a workflow. And it also has to have a direction that it also takes. So workflow systems enables you to automate procedures in which information, tasks, and documents are passed among several participants. So this also controls that move of information from one stage to the next in the development process. Every workflow must have a start and an end to it. So even if it gets created in any system, it must have a start and an end of that process. Then the software itself should just assist in simplifying and optimizing that business process within an organization. So for everything that you do, it does have a workflow process. Then the software simply assists in just optimizing that and making sure that it's also automated. So why do we need workflow? So what is the benefits of the workflow? The first one is that it improves the business operations. So by defining the specific steps and sequences needed to complete a specific task, you can improve the business operations by ensuring that the job is completed by the proper people in the proper order and within a specific time frame. The other thing is it eliminates redundant processes and activities. So implementing the workflow management into your daily activities will allow you to see the entire operations from beginning to end, and it becomes easier for you to incorporate any changes to improve the workflow process and also get rid of unnecessary steps, roles, and activities in the process. It will also allow you to reduce operational expenses. So as processes are streamlined now and work sort of gets done faster and quicker, you may find that you need fewer resources to get the job done. So this can lower your cost as your profits increases, because you can still meet the same goals and objectives with fewer resources this time. And lastly, it automates the processes, which is the main important of the workflow. Is a workflow can help you see where to automate simple tasks, such as sending work items from one employee to the next in the process, and that requires several people to complete specific tasks in a specific order. So instead of someone going in and doing things manually, some of the processes can be automated in a software tool or any PLM tool that you use. So For today's demonstration or use case, this is the simple or the basic workflow that we will be creating. But I'll basically give you the building blocks to eventually get into this complete workflow process. So our process basically here is to create a specific document or a specification document, and then submit that document for a review. Someone reviews the document over there, reviews the document, and once they've reviewed the document, they can decide if the document is complete. If it is not complete, they will send it back for rework with some comments. If it is complete, they will then approve it, and then it goes over to the next task in the activity in the process. Or else they would look at this document and say, okay, we don't really need this document anymore, and basically reject it. And then it is then the end of the workflow process. So we will build something similar to this, but we'll build it that step by step here. Okay, so the tool that I'll be using to build this workflow is called Windchill PLM tool. So for someone who's never seen the tool before, Windchill is web-based system. You simply need the URL to the Windchill server, the username and password to log into the system. I'm currently logged in as the WC admin, the Windchill administrator, who is also a workflow administrator in this case. And on every Windchill page, wherever you are in Windchill, you'll always get this search boxes here. They call it a simple search. So I can at any time go in and pick the type that I'm searching against or searching for. Am I searching for CAD? Am I searching for documents? And then basically put in a keyword that you're searching for. And it will then return the results for you. Then if we go to the Windchill homepage here, you'd have different tables on your homepage. So in my case here, I've got the tasks table. This will simply list all the tasks that are assigned to me. Anything that I need to do, if I need to review a document, if I need to approve the promotion, if I need to do any activities, it will pop up in my task tables under my account. And if your Windchill system is now set up with your email system, you would also get an email with that task that will then link you back to the task in Windchill system here. And the next table is the updates table. So this simply shows me things that are recently modified or recently saved into the Windchill system. And then the last one is the checked out work, which simply means there's a list of things that are checked out to me. So things like that I'm currently modifying and they are logged out to me. Other users can access them and view them in the system, but they won't be able to modify it. Okay, so that's what I wanted to talk about as far as the home page and tables goes. Then back to the topic of today is to create the workflow for the process that I've shown you. And I have created just a simple document here that shows you the steps or sort of steps that we'll take. So for the first step in the process, we'll create just a simple workflow that's got a submit task, submit document task, review document, print and file the document into the filing cabinet, and then that will be the end of the workflow. So we want to be able to create something as simple as this. If someone creates a document, they'll then get a task to submit once they've completed the creation of the document, and then it needs to be reviewed and eventually printed and filed. So to do that, I'll then need to go to the workflow template administration in Windchill. But just before I get to this template administration, I just want to explain the link here, or what I've done so far to build up to this process here. Is the first thing I had done, or we needed to do, was to create a document type that we'll be creating. And in this case, I've created one that I will show to you just now. It is a subtype of a document. It is called a workflow document. So I've created this workflow document. And with that workflow document, I've also went in and create a life cycle for our document. A life cycle simply means the stages that your document would go through as it matures through your process. So I've created one already here that I will also show to you. It's called a workflow underscore LF. I'm just opening a viewer for it. So you'll notice our document will be in work while we're modifying it. And then once it goes for a review, we'll then move it, or it should then move under review here. And then once it's approved, it will then be released. If it gets rejected, it will then go to the obsolete state. But again, once it's undergoing review, and then we realize we need to rework the document, it will then go into the rework stage here or state here. So what I am going to do now is create a workflow for this particular document type and this lifecycle. And once I'm done, I'm going to come back to this lifecycle and then link my workflow to this particular lifecycle, so that as soon as we created our document, it then kickstarts our workflow as well. So now I'm going to go back to the workflow administration panel and then create a new workflow. Right, so the important bit here is we need to just remember that our workflow must always have a start and an end. So I'm going to put in an end flag on this one, and maybe just quickly explain the tools that you have here. So on the left panel here, you've got the tools that you would use to build up your workflow. So there's one for assign activities. This is where we create activities such as submit, review, file, and print. So I'm going to pick that and put down the 3 activities that we will be creating. And then again, there's one for an ad hoc. So if I want to be able to allow someone who is a participant of my workflow to create a quick ad hoc activity during the workflow process, I will then put down these ad hoc activities to allow them to do that. Then also, if we're building a very complex workflows, we can use this here, a block or a process here. So the difference between the two is a block is just created within a parent workflow and can only be used within that parent workflow, whereas a process over here can also be reused in other workflows outside of this one. Then we have the connectors here. An end connector simply means any link that's coming, or all the links that are coming into this operator must be fired or must be executed before you move over to the next task. Then is an end operator. And then the OR operator, on the other hand, will only allow one link coming into it to fire or execute before it moves over to the next task in the process. Then you also have a conditional router. So this would basically fire or execute based on a certain condition. There would be a Java code or a specific code that when it passes, it would then route or complete that or execute that connector. And then the last connector here is the threshold connector. So this one I can basically go and say I need to allow at least, so out of the 5 links coming in, I should allow a minimum of 3 to execute before I can move over to the next. The end, we've already put that down. It is just to end the whole process. And then I can also use the ground tool here. This is simply to end a parallel activity. So I will only have one end action on here. But if there is an activity that's running parallel to this, like a review activity that's running parallel to this one, but it's not important for the moving to the next stage of our process, I can basically put in a ground at the end of that one. And the next one on the list is to notify by email. So I can put down a notification to say you need to review this item, or if my process or my document has been rejected, I can put down a notification to notify the initiator of the process that the document has been rejected. And then we'll talk about this other ones when we start using them in the process. So at this stage, I'm going to go ahead and link my activities in the workflow. So what I'm doing here, I'm just also showing the flow that my activities would take from the start to the end, and then it would follow this this sequence. And the next thing is I'm going to go ahead and provide names for these tasks. So the first one is to submit document. Submitting this document, it's going to be the first task. And then under the activity here, I can also provide the instructions that when the user receives this task, can actually see these instructions and go through them. So our instructions in this case could be create a document, when completed, submit this task. When completed, submit this task. And I can also go in and say this role would actually be the participant for this. So as soon as we get this task, submit document, it will then go to a specific role. But in this case, we're gonna just use one account, which is the creator of the document in this case. So it will just be the creator. And I can also go in and set things like deadline. So once we've set the deadline, we can say, send me a reminder. So we'll set the deadline to say, okay, it's gonna be this amount of days from the start of the activity. So if we're giving this user 5 days to generate this document, we'll then put in 5 days in there. And then that will be the deadline of this document. And we can also decide what to do when we get to that deadline. Do we go back and remind a specific role on here, or do we just skip this activity and move over to the next activity, or do we mark this activity complete so we move over to the next activity, or do we simply just reassign this particular activity to the next person? Yeah, so we can basically do things like that in there. I'm gonna go ahead and just modify this at activities. So this is to review the document. And complete the task. And the next one is print and file document activity. And you can also go in and say in the document, the main printer and file in cabinet X1. Okay, that is it. We've created this workflow. Then the next thing I'm going to do is just give our workflow a name. And I'm going to call it just a demo document workflow, and save it. And then we're now going to check it in and attach it to that life cycle that I talked about earlier. So I'm going to go back to that life cycle. edit it. And then because I want to make sure that as soon as this document is created or is in work state, which is the initial state, my workflow should kick in. So I'm going to go find that workflow, link it, and also select this use latest iteration. The reason for this is if I go back and modify the workflow, my lifecycle must automatically, or this document must automatically use those latest changes as well. So same as the workflow, I'm going to save the changes that I've done and make sure that I check in the workflow so that it can be used. Now we've created that workflow, linked it to the lifecycle. The next thing we need to do is to test this workflow. So I'm going to test the workflow by creating that workflow type document. Create a new document, and for a type, we're going to select the workflow document over here. I'm not going to upload any content to this, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a name. Demo doc 1 is the name, and then finish. Our document is now created, and just to show you the details of the document itself here, it shows you who's modified the document, and it also shows you the life cycle. You'd see it follows the life cycle that I've shown you from that template, life cycle template. So it is currently under in-web state. Now we've created the document, and then we're ready to submit it for review. I'll then go back to my tasks table, and then you'll see under my task tables that I have a task here that says submit a document. So I'm going to that task, and just before I complete the task, I'm just going to show you the process, which is basically the workflow that we've created. So this is the workflow that we've created, and from this workflow at this stage I can see this is my running activity. This is where my workflow is at this stage. So I need to submit this document so that it moves over to the next activity. So I'm going to go ahead and complete this activity. Then refresh my page here. You'll see now I get a next activity, which is to review the document. So the reviewer will then go in, review the document, and then the only option that they have at this stage is to complete this task. To complete it, it then moves over to the last task or activity in the process, which is the print and file. Someone will then go in, open up the document, print it, and then file it in the cabinet. Once they're done, they will then complete this task. Then that means the workflow is now completed. And if I just quickly jump back to the process view of the workflow, you'll also see here that all the tasks has been executed until we got to the end of this document. So the process is done. But in the normal process, I mean, once we're happy with that, we need to now make sure our workflow. The next thing that we will look at now is there's a task to review, but then what happens if the reviewer is not happy with the document, or they need to reject that document? So we now have to add the routing options to this particular process, so that we give the reviewer the powers to decide whether to approve the document or reject it. So that will be the next thing we need to do in our case. So to do that, I'll go back to our workflow. Go back to our demo workflow, check it out so we can modify it. Yeah, and now what we need to do is add those routines for our reviewer. So to be able to do that, I'll open this activities properties page, and then there is a tab for routing. So in this tab, we can go in and set specific routines. So the first one, or the first option we have, is conditional routing. So conditional routing allows you to automatically route a process based on a certain results. And to get to that results, you normally have a Java code that would execute. Maybe it would be something that's looking at a certain parameter of a document. If a certain parameter of a document's value it's a certain value, it will then route your process in a different direction. Or if that particular attribute has got a certain value, it will then approve. So the conditional allows you to do that using the Java code. And then the manual simply allows you to select multiple routes. So if we are in the process of approving something, but we want to also pick who will need to be the approvers of that process, I can allow my task to give you an option to pick departments or roles in the organization that would need to be part of that process. Pick 4 roles or 2 roles based on the selection that they have. So to allow for that, you would use a manual process here. But in our case, we want to be able to either approve, reject, or send back for rework. So they must only choose one. So I'll then go in and provide those routing options. When it's approved, the other one is rework, and the other one is reject. So those are the 3 we have. I'll click OK here, and then you'll see as soon as we've created those routings, with all the links coming out of this review, I get like a question mark on the link. So if I click on that question mark on the link, I get an option to pick what needs to happen for this routing, which transition it should take. So in this case, it would only take that routing if it is approved. So now I need to create the other routines. So for rework, we want it to go back here so that we can modify the document. So I'm just going to put in the operators there so that my workflow is clear. So remember, the work operator will just fire once there's only one link going into it. Once it executes, it will then fire. So that's why I'm using that, to just make sure that my workflow here is neat and everything is visible. So for this one, we're going to go ahead and set it for rework. And then the other one would be for reject here. So that is it. I'm going to go ahead and save this. But before I check this in, chances are when I'm reviewing this document, I might send it back for rework a couple of times. And with how I've set up this link at the moment, it would only fire once. And then the second time I send it back for rework on the very same process, it will stall my workflow. So what I need to do for rework is I need to enable this loop link. So this simply means it would allow me to fire this way multiple times without it stalling my workflow. So that is that, and I'm going to go ahead and save this now. And now let's go in and check in this document and test it to see if it works. So just to save time, I'm not going to create a new document, but I'm just going to reuse this document. And what I'm going to do for this document is to reassign it to the workflow. So I'll reset it so that it starts from the beginning again. So I do that by reassigning the workflow. Then allow it to start. So it will now kickstart the workflow process again. You'll see that we get a task to submit the document. We'll go in. We're done with this document, go in and submit it. Now it gets to a review document task. And what you will notice here is now we get the options to route our document. So I can either approve this rework it, and or reject the process. And if I reject, it will just go to the end and terminate the process. If I approve, it will go to the next. Rework should send it back to submit. So let's go in and send it back for rework. I'm gonna refresh the page here, and you'll see because we've clicked rework, it is now taking us back to the submit document. And if I look at the flow quickly here, you'd see that it went through to review because it's executed, and then from there it was sent back to rework. That's why that's shown as disabled. It means it's been executed. We're back here now in the submit. So I'm going to basically go ahead and submit and reject this document. Submit. In the review, I'm going to go in and reject the document. And you'll see we're not getting the print and file task. It means our flow has now ended. So it went from there, it was rejected, and then it went to the end of the flow. So this is done. So at this stage, this document cannot be used. It is rejected. But now, if I go back to that document itself, someone who's looking at this document would see that it's still in work. So they would assume this is still being worked on. Or the other way could be that once that document has been rejected, someone will have to manually go into this document and set state to rejected or to obsolete in this case, so that we know this is an obsolete document. But that is the function that can also be automated through the workflow. So that will be our next step in our process here. We want to make sure that once a document is has been submitted for review, the state of that document must go to under review and lock it in that under review so that no one can modify it at that stage. And once it's approved, we'll then set the state to released so that everyone would see that is the release document that can be used for production. Again, if it's rejected, it must also reflect that. Same applies with rework. If I'm looking at this document, I can see that it's been reworked. So that will be the next thing we need to do with our workflows here. So again, I'm going to go back to my demo workflow, modify it. And then for this one, I'm going to use the tool that we call robot. So there's a couple of things you can do with a robot here. These are the types or type of things that I can do. So I can using this robot, I can check a document in. So I can pick a document and check that document in. I can go in and check that document out, especially if we send in this for rework. We can also add a checkout so that it automatically checks that document out. Maybe it's something we should do for this one. Yeah, but the one that I'm most importantly looking at is the set state. So we want to make sure that we set state to under review for when it goes under review. Under review. I'm just gonna make copies of these because I'm gonna need 4 of them. So this will be for under review. So that will need to put between the submit and the review. So it will set our document to under review. Then the next one would be for rework. And then we set our state to rework. And that one will need to put it just here. Now we no longer need that operator at this stage. I can go in and just remove it. So that's for rework. And the other one would be for released. If something has been approved, we need to set state to release before we can actually file it. So this will then have to put between those two. And lastly, the reject. We're going to put this under obsolete. Obsolete. Okay, that one I can delete. That's obsolete. And I can get rid of that operator now. Reject. And as I said, because we are for rework, we want to also make sure that this particular document gets checked out as well. So I can also go in and put down the robot for the checkout. And I am going to say it must check it out to this particular, or the creator of the document. Give it a descriptive name. And then I'm going to put that over there. Right. Yeah. So this is basically to just move my document through my life cycle. And now when I send it for rework, it must also check that document out for me. And yeah, check it out for me. And maybe if we submit it, what the other thing can add is if we submit it without checking it in, we must check it in at this stage before it's set it for under review. Okay, so I'm going to go in and check that in. And again, I am just going to reuse this document here by reassigning my life cycle. Done. And if I go back to home, yeah, now I get the submit document. So this is the document we've modified. We're happy with everything. We now submit it for review. It goes for a review. But what I wanted to show with this process is if I just open this document in a separate task here, you will notice at this stage my document has moved from in work to under review. And if I were to go in and rework this or send this back for rework and refresh my document here, you'd see two things has happened here. It has moved it to rework state, and it also has this checked out for me. So at this stage, I can go in, make updates on this document, and once I'm done with that, I'll then go in and manually just check this in, check it in, and then once checked in, I'll then go in and say I've made those modifications. I'm now submitting my document. Goes through for a review. We realize we no longer need this document. We're just going to reject it for this process. We reject the document. And now everyone in the system would see that this document cannot be used. It's obsolete. It cannot be used. Or in fact, you can have the permission settings that sort of hides the obsolete documents to certain users. So if it's in here, they can't even see it. So they won't be able to use it at all. Now, so those are the main things I wanted to show you as far as the workflow setup is concerned. But the other thing that we normally advise to customers when they start using the workflow processes is to also use the existing processes as well, either build from those or just to use them as is. So I'm just going to quickly show you one for promotion. So this is for Windchill promotion process. This is just an out of the box process, and this is how it looks. So you can simply build from here and add your additional processes, remove those that you don't need from the existing process itself. But again, if I'm looking at this is still a simplified processes. You get others that are very complex. Let me maybe show you the change request one. Change request. This is the change request process. So your workflow, as you're building it, the way we've been building ours in that workflow, it can get to this level of complexity. So, and again, when it gets to this sort of level of complexity, you can use those blocks to sort of simplify it by grouping related activities in this process. But yes, yeah, it can definitely get to this. And you'll also notice that on this, they've actually used most of the tools that you have on here. So some of the tools that you can also use there is like the execute expression tool that would simply contain the code that needs to execute based on certain information, and will basically route your process based on that. For instance, if I'm looking at this one here, they've got a code as well, yeah, a Java code, and you'll see based on this Java code, they are assigning certain attributes, certain values, and based on those attributes, your process will then be routed in a specific direction. The other thing we're showing here is there's also a sync one here, a sync expression, because this is a change request. And then from my change request, I can also build a change notice from the CR to the CN. This one here, once you've created a CN from the change request, it then listens. So this stays active or in an implementation state, and then listens for the change notice. If the change notice gets completed or resolved, it will then go back and resolve this related change request as well. Okay, so that is all I wanted to show for this basic workflow creation. And then at this stage, I am going to go and look if there is any questions posted in the questions section here. Right. So good question is how do you log the document to be checked out when it is under review? So that is done through the permissions in Windchill. So you can basically say whenever this type of document is under review, everyone should have just read access to it. Then as soon as the document is moved over there, the reviewer will just review it. They won't also be able to check it out, and no one will be able to check it out while it's in that stage. So that is done through the policy and the permissions in Windchill. Right, another great question is how can you save and export these different Windchill environments? So from QA, for instance, to production. So it's fairly simple. So let's assume this is our QA environment, and I've now tested this demo workflow, and I am ready to implement it on the production side. So I can simply export this out from the QA system, and then when I get to the production side, there's also an action to import it back onto the production environment. Same with the lifecycle that I've shown you. You get the similar functions there. I can export the lifecycle out and then import it into the other side. However, there's other things that you can't really export out. You have to recreate from scratch. Things like a document type that you'll have to go in and create it. That workflow document subtype I've shown you, you have to go back and recreate that. Things like the rows that are used in this workflow, they must also exist in the production side. So you'll need to recreate those in production side. And maybe just to add on to the questions that you have asked is, when the best practice for implementing this sort of thing, or a new lifecycle or a new workflow process, would be you do it in the QA first. In fact, other companies do it differently. You do it in the development system, and then it goes to QA, and from QA is production. That is also what we advise as a best practice. First, you do it in the QA system, you test it, make sure that you get users to test it. Once it's approved, you then deploy it in production. Okay. Yep. Right. Thanks everyone. I see there's no more questions on the questions interface here. At this stage, I'll just carry on with the slides here. So if you want to learn more about Windchill workflows, there is a training specifically for Windchill workflow administration. I think it's a 1 day or 2 day training that basically covers what we've covered plus more, and also the advanced part of the workflow. Okay. And then, yeah, as I said at the beginning, we also offer training visually or in person in the customer side. And then if you're interested in any training course, there is a full schedule of our classes in our website. And then our website is PDSVISION.com. We also have a YouTube channel called PDSVISION. So if you wish to rewatch this webinar at some stage, you will be able to find it under PDSVISION in YouTube. Or if you also wish to share it with your colleagues, it will be uploaded there in the next 2 days or so. It should be available. So if there is no further questions, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has attended today's webinar and stayed till up to now. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.